Hey everybody, this is Kim Lanham. I am here today with one of the giants in the breed. I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased that she agreed to talk to me, Miss Fran Colonna. So we are going to have a conversation about this beloved breed, the Dachshund. And if you all have any questions after the fact, because this is being recorded, shoot me a message and I will send it to her and ask her if she would answer your questions after we are done and after you've had a chance to look at this interview. And hopefully we'll answer most of your questions while we talk. Hopefully we'll do that. All right, Miss Fran, tell us about yourself. Tell us your name, your kennel name. How did you come to do all of this? How did you do it?
Okay, I'm Fran Colonna. For those of you that might not know, I've been around a long time. I grew up with Dachshunds. During the Second World War, we lived with my grandmother, who had a black and tan smooth bitch named Schwartzy. Not very imaginative, it just means black in German. One of the nastiest dogs I've ever known. She lived under the grand piano and bit me every time I moved my feet when I was trying to practice. But because we had a Dachshund in the house, when I got my own dog, I got a black and tan smooth dog because I wanted to show in juniors. And so that was 1950. You could start at 10. That tells you how old I am. And it was free. You got a candy bar for entering, and the classes were huge. We'd have 30 or 40 kids in a class.
Oh, wow.
And they were judged by professional handlers. So I had this black and tan smooth dog that in retrospect was really ugly. But I showed him in juniors. And then in 1952, I was at a dog show and I saw this adorable red Dachshund with a beard. And I ran over and said to this man, "Oh, what is that?" And he let me play with a whole litter of puppies, wire Dachshund puppies, some red, some wild boar. And I whined and cried until my mother, who really didn't much like dogs, or cats, or birds, or horses, or anything else, finally let me get a wire puppy in 1952. And I've had wire hairs ever since.
Wow. Wow.
My kennel name is Kanawha, Kanawha, and it is a river and a county in West Virginia where I grew up and went to high school.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, so you've had wires ever since then, and I guess when I think about you, I think about the long hairs. I know I've heard you talk about Mrs. Howell.
Yeah.
And her influence on you. So will you tell them about Mrs. Howell and how you came to know her and how she came to influence you?
Well, the Army sent us back to Fort Belvoir, Virginia in 71 or 2. My husband got back from his 3rd trip to Vietnam, and we ended up at Fort Belvoir. And I went to a match because I had a wire dog that I'd bought as a pet. Had a lousy coat, cute little dog. And I went to a match and I saw a really rather nice wire hair puppy and talked to the lady. It turned out to be Bobby Fowler and his wife. And then this very nice English lady appeared with the most gorgeous long-haired bitch I think I have ever seen.
Wow.
And I got introduced, and she was very kind, very nice, invited me out to her house to look at dogs. And I went like a shot. And that was Mary Howell. And she was one of those delightful ladies, very British, had a wicked sense of humor. And if she thought you were truly interested in the breed, she would show you every dog in the kennel. She would talk to you. You'd go in the kitchen and put dogs on the table, have a cup of tea, go outside, go back in, have another cup of tea. Oh, endless cups of tea. And dogs. She would give you one if she thought you were really seriously interested. Mm-hmm. If she thought you were just blowing smoke, she could cut you off at the knees so fast you can't believe it. Because if you weren't interested, she wasn't interested.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Mary Howell, Bayard, long hairs. She set type and front in long hairs and probably forever. Almost all long hairs, if you look at the pedigrees now, go back to Bayard. And people who say, "What's that?" Get your pedigrees out, folks, and start looking.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, tell me about Bayard, because I know when I've looked at pedigrees, she had a way of naming her dogs. I've noticed that, but I don't really know
When
why.
she came to this country from England, just shortly after the Second World War, her husband was the head of UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation, and came to this country in 49 or 50, I don't remember which. And they lived in New York while he worked for the UN. And then they came down to Virginia and bought this gorgeous, great big place. And he bought her a long-haired dog whose name was Karl Hans von Ritter Bayard. And Ben Klimkowitz showed the dog, finished him by winning groups because there were so few long hairs, nobody had ever seen one.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And that started her mania for long hairs. So then, as she got more dogs, she was very specific with the names. They were all French names. For instance, the one I got from her was Bayard La Manon because she was a bitch. Nicola was Nicola La Bayard Le Nicola because he was a male.
Mm-hmm.
They were of her breeding there in her kennel.
Mm-hmm.
If she took a puppy back, that was all her breeding. Then it would be Chantal de Bayard. You see the difference?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And then when she bred miniatures, she bred small standards down to breed minis. Then they had two English words like Bayard Good News, Bayard Gypsy Dancer. And when she went out to set her fronts, she went out to Ben Klimkowitz's smooth dogs, Ben Celia Native Dancer and Ben Celia Northern Dancer. So the first generation of those were all smooth. And they were simply named Bayard Erica, Bayard Kismet, with no article.
Okay.
So you knew those were the smooths.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for deciphering all that, because I noticed it when I looked at it and I thought, looks like, she's got lo, she's got la, she's got duh. And I took a little bit of French and I could kind of understand, but I thought, no, I wonder exactly what her process was, so thank you.
It's very specific. It's so you can always know at a glance what in the pedigree, what the dog is, whether it's smooth or a dog of her breeding returned to her.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when did you decide that you might want to breed these dogs?
Dachshunds in general?
Mm-hmm.
Had to have been after I got married because my mother certainly wasn't having puppies in the house.
I understand. Well,
mm-hmm. So sometime in the 60s.
Okay. And what kind of pushed you into that to say, I don't want to just be around these dogs. I don't want to just show these dogs. I don't want to just work with people who have these dogs. I want to breed these dogs.
Probably when we went back to Fort Belvoir in 71 or 72, because that was the first time that I had space and the Army wasn't going to pick me up and move me again in 6 months, and I could sort of spread out and grow roots for a while. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, so now you have grown up with this. I mean, you've done this for a long time. Tell me, when people are looking at a dachshund, what should they be looking for? What makes a dachshund a dachshund? What makes them ideal, so that your average person who comes and says, I'm walking at the park yesterday and a lady said, oh, is that an Irish setter puppy? And I said, no, she's a standard long-haired dachshund, and we stood and I let her pat her, and all of that. And so I just want people to know, here's what you should see when you see a well-bred dachshund. Not one that's 10 feet tall and,
Well, yeah. It should be pretty. It should very definitely be Dachshund. It should be long and low. It should be good temperament, well socialized. And when you buy a pet, there are all sorts of minor things that you're going to get, like slightly cowhocked or slightly easty-westy in front or slightly slab-sided, or things that breeders simply don't want to keep and perpetrate. But still a decently bred dog that looks like a Dachshund.
Right. Right.
It's a unique little breed. It's
Definitely.
all front. It should be happy. It should be outgoing. It should never be shy or temperamental.
Mhm. Mhm.
That doesn't say it's slavishly happy rolling over on its back and waving its feet at you like a Shetland sheepdog or a golden retriever, because they're a little more aloof than that. But once introduced, they should be friendly.
Right. Well, I know at the park the lady was so surprised at how friendly Iris was, and she was just, she made mention of, having seen smooth dachshunds in the past that were little nasty boogers, and she was like, I can't believe this is a dachshund, and I said, well, sure, and I said, I think if you look for someone who puts the time and the effort into their puppies, you'll find that most of them are this way. Glad to meet you, happy to see you. Trainable, that kind of thing. So
if they've been socialized.
If they've been socialized.
And even the vets will generally tell you that they've been bitten more times by a Dachshund than any other breed.
I agree. Mine told me that too.
Yeah.
She said, my techs are always so glad when you come in here because you show them what a Dachshund should be,
Yeah.
And that's just no higher.
I've never had a vet that hasn't said that to me somewhere along the line. And I always say, well, that's just badly bred, badly trained, badly raised. It's not really the dog's fault. Well, it could be if they're pathologically shy, but it's really not the dog's fault usually.
Well, tell us, when a dachshund is coming towards you, tell us about that front. Tell us about that front.
The dog comes at you. It's very hard to describe without showing somebody. The dog's front is slightly bent. It's a parentheses this way. He is wider at the shoulder, certainly, than he is where his feet come down.
Right.
So he comes at you more or less straight, but he tends to move in. He doesn't gait straight at you like a terrier or a bulldog. Each step, the front folds in towards its opposite foot. Doesn't touch, not like a basset, doesn't have wrist bones that touch, but it is narrower where its feet come down than it is at the shoulder.
Right. Right. That's fabulous. That's exactly what that I think people can picture that. I do. So tell me, when you're looking at these dogs, there's so much that people look at, and I think sometimes the beautiful flowing coat can get in the way, of them seeing the whole
Detract from the dog.
Yeah. So talk to people about when they see a dog that's heavily coated, what should they be looking for under that coat? Where's the dog in that?
It's very seldom they're going to see one with a very heavy coat unless it's been pampered and babied from the time it was born, because it's a show dog. Most of the dogs, long hairs that I remember seeing shown in the 60s and 70s, 80s, had very little coat. They had fringe and they had tail feathers and ear fringe, but they didn't have the huge body coats that we see now. As the dog goes away from you, he should have a good enough drive in the rear that you see his pads come up behind him. And as he comes at you, he should reach as far towards his nose as he can with the same amount of kick in the rear. From the side, it's noticeable. You can see how far they reach. Dogs with restricted front reach are generally straight in shoulder or very short ribbed and keeled, so that they have to kind of high step to get out of the way of the rear.
Talk to the people about ribbing and keel. Explain to them what that is so that they understand, when they hear that said, because I've seen that, on Facebook, what is ribbing? What is keel? What do you mean? So
The front end, the ribbing and keel are the hallmark of the dog. It is a front breed.
right.
The dog was bred to go to earth. He digs his way into a hole, grabs his prey, and has to back out, carrying it, dragging it, whatever he can manage. Therefore, he is short, low to ground. He has tremendous length of ribbing so that he has heart and lung room and can work underground. He has smaller things like loose skin so he doesn't get stuck. All of his power is up front in his jaw and his front legs. He digs with the front and kicks it out with the rear. But he has a prominent forechest, again, to give him heart and lung room. The ribbing should carry back, well back, behind his front legs. The keel is the breastbone, the sternum, and it should carry back behind the front legs with the ribbing attached to it. The loin should be short before you get to the rear end. Dogs that are short-keeled, short-ribbed, and long in loin are in two pieces. They bounce when they move because they can't transmit the power sufficiently from the rear to the front. So the body is broken in two and bounces.
Okay,
Does that
well,
make sense?
it absolutely makes sense. Absolutely. Well, now talk to me about dogs who, what should someone look for if they are considering, if they have a dog and they think they'd like to show it? What advice would you give them before they make that leap, so that they are prepared? They're prepared. The dog is prepared.
Look at dogs. You need to look and look and look at dogs. And if possible, put your hands on dogs. And then compare what you're seeing in the ring that's winning with what you've got at home. Okay. If what you have at home is so completely different, please start over.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Look until you see what you like and talk to those people that have them and try to buy the very best bitch you can. Show her. If you decide to breed, fine. Go back to those breeders and find a dog that complements her in her pedigree, the very best that you can afford, and breed to that. And with luck, you might have show dogs in 2 or 3 years. Be patient.
Absolutely.
It's a long-term thing. Unless you have enough money to be able to go to one of the breeders and buy top-of-the-line dogs because you just want them shown, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I'm glad that you talked about how it's not a race. It's the slow and steady are going to get there, but it does take time. It does.
Whatever you do, if you decide to breed, then don't breed to the flavor of the month. That doesn't work. Breed to some. Pick your poison. You can inbreed, line breed, outcross, pedigree, complementary dogs, breeder's coefficient. There's any number of ways that you can go when you decide to breed. But once you do that, stick with it. Right. Don't jump around.
Right. Well, I just, I asked that question because I've noticed in other Facebook forums discussion about importing dogs, in particular, maybe standard longs from Russia. And, I guess I just wonder how far, that'll really take you sometimes if it doesn't match up with what we have here, which to my eye, the standard longs do not sometimes match up to what we have here. How can that, doing something like that, I feel like it's not taking some of these young people forward who want to move forward. They want to be breeders, they want to show their dogs, but, they're not bringing something in that doesn't quite match up with what we have here. It's not, I guess in the long run, it isn't taking them very far at all, is my concern for them. And that's why, I've
That,
suggested,
that strikes me as being more or less the same thing as a total outcross, unless the dog had originally, something in the dog had come from here and gone overseas, and then that same breeding is coming back in the form of this dog you're importing. You don't really know what you're getting.
Right.
You pays your money and you takes your choice. You might get something great and you might not. I mean, there have been instances of dogs that came into this country, like Pondewick Hobgoblin, who sired well, especially when crossed with Vantabee's Drop Timothy daughters. But again, who would have known?
Right.
It's a fluke.
It's a fluke, yeah.
They just clicked, and ordinarily you couldn't pinpoint that from here and say, I'm going to go get that dog because I think it'll be okay. You don't know until you try it. And the genetics of it, there's millions and millions of genes out there. Are you going to get what you want?
Boy, it really, yeah. So, talk to me about breeding, because stepping into that, it really is a crapshoot. It really is. You can make an educated move, I think, towards it, to try to put two animals together that you think complement each other, looking at their pedigrees, looking at their temperament, looking at everything that you want in your mind's eye, the ideal dog, and sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. And I think it's important for people to hear, from people like you, start over. Keep going. Don't quit.
Don't quit, but don't be afraid to say, this isn't what I want. I'm not doing this again, and try something else.
Exactly.
Now, breeders who have been at it for many, many years ordinarily have stashed dogs around. They co-own dogs. They have them living with somebody else, so they can go back and forth and pick and choose which sire to use. Whether they want to breed a bitch more than once or not. The days of, like Mary Howell, of having 100 dogs in a kennel are pretty much over. You can't find space to do that anymore, or money.
That's right. Well, what would you advise people to do who want to maybe put some research in and try hard to see as many dogs as they can before they take that leap into breeding? What can they do, since we don't have all these big kennels anymore? I would have loved, to have seen something like that. I would have loved it, but I mean, they're not here. They're not. There's nothing for me,
they're not.
To look at like that.
If we get back to shows, go to shows, and don't watch one variety and leap up and go home. Stay there. Pay attention.
Right.
We used to have benched shows, and you couldn't leave until 3 o'clock, and it was wonderful because you wandered up and down the aisles and you talked to people, and you sat on folding chairs in front of the Dachshunds and swapped pedigrees and had lunch and looked at dogs and played with puppies, and it was great education. Now you have to stay at the show, try and find a friendly face and pick their brain. Ask if you can put your hands on something that strikes your fancy. Do you mind if I go over this dog? Talk to me about this dog. Can I please come look at it? Most breeders, once they're done showing, are pretty pleasant about it. Don't walk up to somebody who's got an armband on and liver stuck between their teeth and a comb in each hand and looks like they're going to jump right out of their skin any second and say, hi, can I look at your dog? Because she's going to bite your head off right there on the spot.
Right.
Wait.
Right.
But yeah, most breeders are pretty decent about it if you approach nicely.
I agree. I just, like I told you before we started recording, sitting with you at DCA was invaluable to me. And it was. And I, that's why we're doing all these things, is so people can hear, here's what I can do to help myself. Here's, you've decided to do this, so here's how you got to figure out how to help yourself. So I think,
you can look at all the dogs you want and you can pick everybody's brain and you can still do it wrong. So try again.
Try again. Absolutely. Everybody, I hope you heard that. People in the back, try again.
Try again.
Try again. Okay, so talk to me about puppies. You've worked yourself, you've got this bitch, you've finished her, you've bred her right, you think you've got this litter of puppies. Where do you go from there? How do you, temperament, you're looking at the whole dog. You're looking at their
First off,
temperaments, you're looking at everything.
my puppies were always all born in the house. So I had children and then grandchildren and house cats and the vacuum cleaner and the dishwasher and the lawnmower. And, they grew up in all this chaos and it was good for them. Everybody got to talk to the dogs. Everybody that came through the house stopped and talked to the puppies. And you took them out and played with them in the yard. You put them on a lead and you let them wander around with you. They have to be socialized, and it has to be done gently as well as early enough to make it worthwhile. You do have to pay some attention to whether you're taking them away from the mother too soon or too late, because either is bad. One way they become neurotic and people rather than dogs, and the other way they never are people dogs, they're dogs. I look at puppies when they're first born, when they're 6 or 7 weeks old, and then about 12 weeks. And by then, anything that's very definitely a pet, you can generally see and pass on. Those that you're going to grow ahead for a while, be prepared to keep puppies maybe as much as 6 months.
Right.
I look at puppies when they feed. I want to look down on them and see a perfectly smooth flow from shoulders back to the rear end. I don't want to see bumps behind the shoulders and bumps behind the ribbing before the hips. I want a smooth flowing body. And when they move, you can see a bad moving dog, even as a puppy.
Right.
It's not that hard to pick out. Come on, folks. Just because it's cute doesn't mean it's good.
Well, that's the truth. Now, when you're looking to put two dogs together, you're hoping to do a breeding. For you, did you typically, because you talked about the different types of breeding you could do. What worked best for you? Did you look at the two dogs in front of you and say, I'm putting these two dogs together? Did you look at the pedigrees behind them and say, I'm putting these two families of dogs together? I'm doing an outcross. And if you did, why? Why would you do that? Just kind of, talk to us about methods, why you did it.
I did both. I generally line bred, and I would try to breed dogs together that I thought would be good for each other. Basically, okay, put my foot in my mouth now. Never, ever keep and breed a bad front. I don't care how pretty it is. I don't care what its driving rear looks like. If it's bad in front, it goes away.
Right.
In any variety. Good fronts are recessive. If you lose them, you can almost never get them back. So keep your good front. Don't fight to get back to a good front. Be ruthless about it.
So, because I've heard some people say too, with your puppies, be brutal in evaluation, because
Absolutely.
you're doing yourself no favors if you don't, because what you see will come back to get you if you
it will. Be absolutely brutal about it. I don't think I ever did a total outcross, except with Minnie, just because it's too chancy. You have no idea what you're going to get. I did try and breed minis down from small standards. And and it does take time. It's a good 2 or 3 year project to try and do that. Take a small standard, very correct, very typey small standard and in wires with a good coat. Oh, please, God, folks, don't keep workable coats. If it's a soft coat, don't strip it at 3 months so you can show it at 6. It's a soft coat. It's going to bite you in the ass. Get rid of it.
Mhm, mhm.
We have so many bad coated dogs out there. We also have a lot of single coated dogs now.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay, so have you, when you've got this bitch and you're considering breeding her, what makes a brood bitch? What makes a brood bitch? You know, I read that book by Mr. Robert Beauchamp. That book just changed my life. And he, you know, he talked about having maybe two girls that you're considering. One may be really flashy, one may be more of a peasant type girl. And he said, you know, your best puppies may come out of that peasant girl, may not come out of her pretty sister. It may come out of that peasant girl.
That doggy bitch may be your brood bitch.
Doggy bitch, that's it. Yeah. So talk to people about that, because I think sometimes, you know, we lose sight. Your eye is drawn to the pretty girl, you know.
You know, it's don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And again, if you're going to show these dogs, understand that if you hand a dog off to a handler, sooner or later he's going to finish it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Does that mean it's wonderful?
Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a champion. Should it be special?
See.
Not usually.
Okay, talk about that, because that's something that I've, you know, noticed more and more, is it just because it finishes doesn't mean it needs to be special. It just doesn't. It, help people
Great,
understand that.
great specials are few and far between.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And be very happy if you get one, because it doesn't, lightning doesn't strike very often twice in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
You can gear your breeding towards a certain type of dog, and after enough years of breeding, you have your own bloodline built up, and you're pretty well know what you're going to get when you breed.
Mm-hmm.
To young breeders starting out, that's awfully hard to do.
Right.
You're lucky. You hope that each generation is going to be slightly better than the last one.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not, you've done something wrong. Back off and look at it again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And change direction or start over.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, talk to us about the stud dog. What makes a good stud dog? What should you be looking for?
The dog that reproduces what you saw in him and liked. And frequently you look at that dog and think, boy, that dog's pretty. I'd like to breed to him. Back up a step even further. Go back and see if you can find his father. That might be the better choice.
Might be the better choice. I've heard that said, that if you like the dog, go to his daddy. Find his daddy.
Go back and look at the father. And sometimes you go back and look at the father and go, oh my God, not on a bet.
Okay, well, so tell me then, what makes, you know, what makes some people so successful at this, you know, and other people not so much? I mean, if everything's kind of equal, which I know it normally isn't, but, you know, if it were, what do you see that makes some people, you can see them moving forward, and other people, you know, it's like they're stuck in a hamster wheel and are not quite moving forward?
Common sense and perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not better than the last generation, don't do it again.
Don't do it again.
Yeah. If you have something that works, like, I think my favorite was always grandfather, granddaughter, or aunt, nephew, that kind of breeding.
Mm-hmm.
Not real super close, but fairly close. Something that you could see in both sides. Sometimes you just take a leap and say, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, so what, so if you're a young person starting out, or even if you're not, I'm not young, I'm 49. So, you know, if you're starting out, and you've identified something that you like, should you, I've often heard people talk about, you know, mentorship. Well, should you seek someone in your breed? Should you seek someone outside of your breed? Should you, you know, get perspectives from a Doberman breeder, you know, on how she did this?
Doesn't hurt to talk to other breeds.
Okay.
It's all because eventually you're going to discover that everybody comes back to it in the same way, somehow or the other, in all breeds, no matter what the breed is. Everybody has a way of doing it, be it line breeding or outcrossing or whatever. Just keep asking questions and keep looking at dogs until you find something that you really, truly like the look of and try it. I won't completely outcross, but you know.
Well, what, oh, I don't know. When you've got these puppies, you know, you've come full circle, you've got a litter on the ground, you've got these puppies, and of course they hung the moon because they're yours. And, you know, you are trying to help yourself give an honest evaluation. You're trying to, you know, train yourself to be brutal with these puppies. And, you know, I guess I'm wondering what is most important? Because sometimes I see animals that I think have been kept and even moved through, you know, breeding program because they're pretty, but their temperament or something is horrible, you know?
Don't do that.
Yeah, okay, because that's, you know, you're gonna get that again. I wonder because you know, you see some things, I know we all have to decide what is most important, you know, to each one of us, but what advice would you give people they've got these puppies and, you know, there's one that just, you know, ticks all the boxes except, you know, what would be a deal breaker? Is it temperament? Is it, you know, he's got a bad foot, he's got a bad foot, he's got, you know, a wanky, janky rear. What's the deal breaker?
Whoa, what was that? My light just went off. If they've got bad temperament, you can't do it. Don't. Yeah. That's interesting. Well, so much for that. Yeah, bad temperament is a deal breaker for me. As I said, a bad front, just don't do it. So you kept 3 out of 7 puppies to run on, and now they're 4 or 5 or 6 months old, and you're sitting there looking at them and you're thinking, gee, she's really pretty, but she doesn't hold her top line all the time. And she's not as pretty, but she's sounder. And he's incredibly sound, but he's not pretty. Okay? Where are you going?
I think I'd go with the sound dog.
I can get sound from the pound. What makes it a dachshund?
That's true. We're looking at the front. He's
Breed
got
type
it built right.
Type makes it a dachshund. Breed type.
Okay.
Yep. When you go in the ring to judge, Annie Clark always said, pick out the best type dogs and bring them up front, and then find the soundest dog within that.
Okay.
Because if you don't have breed type, you don't have a dachshund.
I see. Okay. Awesome. Well, okay. So when you're looking, you know, at these puppies, then do people make the mistake of looking at them as little adults, kind of the way we do children, you know, instead of this is the puppy, you may see something more exaggerated in the front or the rear, you know, but it's a puppy. You shouldn't, I guess, when can you, if you see something that's maybe over exaggerated, over angulated or something like that, but then you know they've got to grow into some of that body that they have, kind of like boys, since I have boys, grow into those big feet they have. They're getting taller and taller finally to match the skis, you know, that they're standing on. So what, you know, are people looking at puppies incorrectly sometimes and looking, you know, at them as if they're adults already? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I first off, again, here we go. I think we show them too young.
Okay.
I think taking puppies out and showing them a couple or 3 times as puppies to make sure they're not terrified or whatever is fine. But don't keep showing them and getting them beaten and dragging them around week after week until you finally finish them. And then you can say, oh, he finished as a puppy. Well, okay. So it took 52 shows. What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
At 2.5, he's going to have it together or not, and then you can finish him in 6 shows.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. Let them grow. Let them grow. I have been told that more than once. Let them grow up. Give them a chance, to grow up and see what you've got. So what's the future, Miss Fran? What's the future looking like for this breed? What's the future looking like for the sport?
Oh, I
What's the
think
future looking like for breeding?
the sport's in big trouble. We don't have dedicated breeders anymore. We have very few people left who have the patience to do it over years.
Mhm.
And like I say, can keep good dogs more than 2 or 3 at a time, or stash them with somebody so that they have them. The only way you can really consistently produce good dogs is to be able to breed good dogs.
Mhm.
And you have to have a few dogs in order to do that. The person like I was, who was sitting in a set of army quarters and was only allowed 2 dogs, has a great deal of trouble trying to keep any kind of pedigree going.
Right.
Once you get space enough to keep 5 or 6 dogs, then it's easier.
Mhm.
I do think we need to be harder on the dogs that we take out and show. We need to be more critical of what we show.
Mhm.
Don't show me a dog that's okay and then say, I know it's got big round eyes, but that's a minor problem. Well, no, it's not a minor problem. Big round eyes underground get clawed or get dirt in them. There's a reason the standard says what it says.
Mhm.
There's a reason that we say the dog is compact and low slung. It's got to go down into a hole and then get itself out again. Hello. But I do think that we need to seriously reassess where we're going with this sport. It's expensive. It's time consuming. It is, after all, a hobby, and we are supposed to be evaluating breeding stock, not playing popular dogs.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I would always rather show to a breeder judge than an all breed judge,
Okay.
with
Okay.
rare exceptions. There are people who truly have a good eye
Mhm.
for many breeds, and they're okay. But there are a great many all breed judges that I don't know what I don't know what motivates them.
I understand. I understand. So, what would you advise? I know you said if you are interested in this breed, try and go to shows. Try and find shows in your area that you can
Mhm.
get to so that you can see, as much as you can in one place and you have people there that you can talk to. If they do that, if they're kind of lurking, at these shows and watching, standing by watching, because, I've done that just going over to the Doberman ring or something, just kind of
Oh
lurking
yeah.
and watching because I just think, Dobermans are lovely. Um, what would you say for them to do next? They've identified, maybe a breeder or two that they like his or her dogs and they want to know more, but they don't really know how, especially in the age of, nobody reads a book. Like we talked about. Nobody looks for books. How can we help the young people who Facebook is what they know? Google is everything. It's what they know. How do we, I guess, bridge this gap so that we can reach these people, keep these people? That's been something that's kind of been on my mind because it's just I feel like that's where the animal rights people have really gotten a leg up. They have these sob stories on TV on, they have commercials and, they're bombarding your senses. How can we let people know, we are here, kind of like that Dr. Seuss book I read to my kids, we are here, and we're available. What do they do next?
Well, this sort of thing fills the gap. Uh, if you can't get to shows and you can't put your hands on umpteen zillion dogs, talk to people, read. If you don't understand it, go to somebody, call somebody up and say, I just read this and I don't understand what it is. See if you can get somebody, a long-term mentor, to somebody that you can always talk to and ask that kind of question. They're sometimes hard to come by too. You have to prove that you're interested in the breed before most people are willing to take on the job of, and it is a job of mentoring somebody long term.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I think the future is very iffy because it's an old. We're becoming a very old group of people in this sport. We're not getting young people to stay, and I don't know exactly what the answer is. I don't know. I loved it. I started out as a kid wanting to do this and stayed with it all my life. I don't know how you do that with kids anymore. They have too many other things that are instant gratification rather than spending the time raising a dog and taking care of it and being responsible for it. I don't think we're fostering that very much in this country.
Right. Yeah. And I've heard, people say that there used to be picnics. There used to be, more of a community feel, and that has been lost. And I do wonder if that can be somehow regained. I'm not sure how, but
we used to go to matches, and you almost never see a match anymore.
Right.
I've never been to a training class, but I sure went to a lot of matches with puppies and young dogs. And most specialty clubs in the summers would have a picnic, and show dogs, have a match along with the picnic, and new people could come and wander around and look at the dogs, and it was great fun. Somebody in the kennel club, in the specialty club, usually had a place that had a huge lawn, and we could sprawl out all over the place and show puppies and, play silly buggers with dogs, or a swimming pool or whatever. It's amazing how funny dachshunds can be when you take them in somebody's swimming pool. Some of them can't swim.
That, I really wish there was a way to kind of come back to some of that and to just kind of have that community feel, because I think then that way you could really help raise kids that way, help raise other people's kids up in this,
I'm not sure we have much of a sense of community about anything, not just dog shows, but anything.
Anything.
I grew up sitting on the front porch in the evening and talking to our neighbors and the people across the street, and kids played hide and seek, and everybody knew everybody. I've been sitting in this house for 37 years, and I've never met the people over there in that corner house.
Yeah, I understand. I do. It's the same way. I think it's the same way everywhere. Well, I know you've said, don't give up, start over if you have to. I just want to, be sure is there any other advice to keep them going?
Oh, gee, I don't know. I mean, winning occasionally certainly helps. But if you don't have a decent dog, you can't win. Well, you might as a fluke once in a while, but, you have to do better dogs in order to win. And somehow, I think they say the average age of people at dog shows is, the average length of time is about 5 years, and they get tired of it and give up and quit. And some of that is that people are not nice to them to help them along. And some of it is, again, instant gratification. This is a long, slow process, not quick and easy.
Right.
And I don't have an answer to that.
They just have
to
keep
wish.
Going. Just have to keep going.
Yeah.
Now, since that time that you got involved in dogs, has it all been worth it? Everything.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, after all, just think, tomorrow I might win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what else would you like to say to these people, we've got so many people on that site now who are not exhibitors, they are not breeders. They have come across us. They've been told, maybe by their breeder about the site where they can get, here's where you can hear from people directly. What do you want them to know? If there's any one thing, two things, 10 things, what do you want them to know so that they can save themselves some hassle?
If you're interested in Dachshunds, understand it's a delightful breed. It is not a lap dog. It is a hunting dog. It is independent. It is willfully stubborn and disobedient.
Absolutely.
It's bright. If you think that dog's not thinking, you're wrong, because it is.
Definitely.
It is thinking all the time.
Yeah.
I also have Afghan hounds. I have had English foxhounds and beagles and a couple of Goldens and a couple of labs, and none of them are as smart as the Dachshund. The Dachshund can think its way around every one of those dogs. In the time it takes the big dog to swallow a milk bone, the Dachshund is going, I can take that away from you so fast.
Yeah.
They are not easy to live with, but they are rewarding because they're always interesting. And I like wires because I like the personality. And all three coats have different personalities. And if a breeder tells you they don't, they're wrong. Wires are always busy, always into something. Because of the terrier outcross, they're a little more aggressive all the way around. They'll play tennis ball until they drop dead at 18 in your kitchen. Long hairs are much more laid back, much the easiest temperament of the three varieties. They're very willing to sit on the couch and do nothing. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a bunch of lazy bones.
Smooths can be a little bit nervier all the way around, a little bit more standoffish. All three varieties in both sizes bark. Oh dear God, do they bark. They bark at grass growing and leaves falling, and the doorbell just sends them into paroxysms of fury.
That's the truth.
So unless you're willing to have a squirt bottle at hand or debark the dog, it's gonna bark. It's the best doorbell you've ever had.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, okay, so that's for the people who are, just starting out. What would you say to those of us who are, I don't know, if they're mid-level exhibitors, mid-level breeders, what would you tell them to how would they stay the course to get, the next rung up? Maybe you're looking at, I want to be a master breeder. How do we get there?
Support it and go to DCA and talk to breeders. Old-time breeders are rapidly dying because we're old. And if you're interested in history of the breed or people who made it what it is, look it up or talk to people. Look at pictures. Oh my God, there are millions of pictures. The Dachshund History Project website has pictures galore that you can look at and study. There are all sorts of things that the membership, the DCA website is going to have some more stuff fairly shortly. But find people that are interested in the breed like you are and spend some time with them. Look at everybody's dogs. Don't walk up to somebody and say, can I look at your dog? Oh my God, that's ugly. But do find people that will let you say, this doesn't look the same as that one. What's the difference?
Right. Right.
And there are people who are perfectly happy to do that. I used to put dogs on the table occasionally and say, tell me what's wrong with it, when I knew what was wrong with it, and wait and see if the young novice or mid-level person could come up with what it was that bothered me as much as it did. Sometimes they wouldn't. They'd just say, oh, I don't see it. I don't see that. And I'm like, really?
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
So, then I guess blindness, I've heard this term kennel blindness, is something that stops people from moving forward. Um, what else would you, just personally, you like to say to people who are going to carry this on? What would you like to say to them personally, and how to charge them with that responsibility? What do you have to say about that to people coming up, people who are going to try to move it forward? What do
Do
you
you
see as
do you
the
want this
responsibility?
breed to continue to look as it should, with that gorgeous sweep of head and neck and top line, and the downward turn over the nasal bones, the elegance that we have now? Do you want it to continue to look like that, or do you want a generic dog that just looks like it came out of the pound?
Mhm,
If
mhm,
not, then it is your responsibility to breed the correct dog.
mhm,
This, wait, excuse me.
mhm.
I just happened to think about something here. What? We have just had this reprinted, and it's available on the website. This is the illustrated standard.
Yes. Mhm,
You
mhm.
want your dog to look like that, or do you want it to look like a golden retriever with short legs?
Right. Right.
Okay?
Mhm,
Everybody should have a copy of this. For your own education, to show people who come to you and ask about puppies. Some people have bought enough of them that they can give them away with their puppies when they sell them.
mhm,
It's a great educational tool, especially for new people.
mhm, mhm,
The board spent a great deal of time putting this together.
mhm.
It is the standard, the current standard, and some marvelous drawings showing you shape of head, the bite, tail set, everything we could think of is
Mhm.
in there in an illustration.
It really is a wonderful thing to have. It's a wonderful resource, and I think Lex has mentioned it, and people have talked about it before, and I think they've actually had quite a few requests for it coming in, because it really is
Well,
fabulous to have.
We published it first in 1995, and the AKC gave us a pause up, which was sort of unheard of
Mhm,
at the time, and we've just now had it republished with the new revised standard in it.
mhm,
So
mhm.
it should be available,
Yeah, it
you
is.
say?
It is. Yeah, we've had questions about it, and I think DCA has received some orders for it for
Good,
sure. So,
good, as it
well,
should be.
Ms. Fran, I did not want to keep you more than an hour. I could personally just sit here and talk to you forever. So
Well,
I thank you for
you're quite
taking the
welcome.
time.
And I'm always sort of surprised. I go to DCA every year, and I spend a great deal of time sitting there by myself watching dogs. I don't bite except on alternate Thursdays. So
Okay, friends, did you
if
hear
you have a
that?
question, come and ask.
Come and ask, please.
I'm
Ask
always happy to
her.
chat with people.
She's wonderful to sit and talk to, and you will be blessed if you do it. So please look for her. Come to DCA. It's going to be in Texas this year. We hope.
We hope.
Please, we hope. Please come. Please seek out people who have the knowledge, because they
Oh,
can
yeah.
help you and they are willing to help you. So
And there are a
please
fair
remember
number
that.
of people floating around. Once he's done showing, Carlos is good to talk to.
Mhm.
Jane Fowler, if she comes, is a wonderful resource, and she's as old as I am. Um, Somebody else that just crossed through my head and crossed right out again. Oh, well. But most of those people who sit quietly around the ringside watching have done a good job, because part of the reason is they sit quietly around the ring at ringside and watch.
That's right.
And they've spent years doing that,
Mhm. Mhm.
paying attention to what's being shown, and yeah, storing it up, little
Mhm.
tidbits.
Well, that's what we need, and I hope that this will help somebody. I hope that they will now know who they can talk to. If they get to see you, if they get to see you at shows, they now know they can feel free to come and
Oh,
chat.
absolutely. Just
Mhm.
wander up and say hi.
She knows everything, folks. She knows everything. So please.
No, but a lot of stuff that people have forgotten.
Come talk to her. You know, I am happy to talk to anybody. I have not nearly the kind of experience that she has and that she's willing to share, but I will help you if I can. So please seek out some help. You will do yourself a favor. So
Everybody try to help each other because that's the only way we're going to get the sport to survive.
I agree. I agree. It does seem like it's in peril right now, and it's discouraging. And the numbers and the young people not wanting to be involved. They have so many other things taking their time, taking their money, taking, you know, we've got to make it more attractive to them to come in and to stay.
Yes, and find a way for them to stay without making it a burden.
Exactly.
You can do it with 1 or 2 dogs, and you can show that one dog until you're tired of showing it, or it's tired of being shown, and then breed it and wait 6 months and come out with a puppy and take it home again and let it grow. And but you can keep your hand in that way.
Well, that's good to know.
As long as you pay attention and try and do it right.
Well, they need to hear that. They need to, you know, hear that you don't have to have 20 dogs at your house. You know, you can manage. You really can. And that kind of, you know, organization and forward planning, that's what they need to know. That's what they need to hear.
And again, don't say, oh, I'm going to breed Delisle across the street because he's free and he's there. Don't do that.
Right.
Okay? That's not helping anybody.
You're adding to
the
problem. The dogs that you see that you think it's a dachshund, but you're not quite sure. It makes you just kind of, you know, and you don't want to ask, you know, you don't want to ask because it's just, you know, you don't want to be rude, but yeah. Ooh. Well, Ms. Fran, any other final thoughts? Anything at all?
Oh, I don't know, other than to say it's been a good hobby all these years, and it is a hobby. It is not the be all and end all of your life. If you don't win Joe Blow's open class, don't go commit hara-kiri. Just do it again. Start over somewhere. We're evaluating breeding stock. That's the basis of the dog show. And if you can't make each generation a little bit better than the last one, then you're not doing it right. So back off and have a good look at it and decide where you might have gone wrong and what you can do to fix it.
Definitely.
What else?
Well, I think that's it. I didn't want to keep you, you know, more than an hour because I know you have other things to do. So I didn't want to, you know, have to. You know, I could talk to you for another hour. You know, we can stop the recording and I'll just talk to you for an hour. You know.
And you know, feel free to edit this, cut it, drop it, whatever pieces that are redundant, whatever.
It's been fabulous.
Change it.
It's been fabulous. We're not cutting anything. It's been great. So I've loved it.
I'm glad.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording, but hang with me. Hold on.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
You're very welcome.